Okay, now that we have our pseudocode going, now we're ready to open up Visual Studio and convert our pseudocode into C programming code. We open Visual Studio, we hit create a new project, then we go to empty project and hit next. Visual Studio builds a folder on our desktop. Normally we would name it something like Lab 8 with our first letter of our first name and our last name. But since this isn't a lab, I'm just going to call it box volume area, so I can upload it and to D2L and you can look at it from there. Okay, so we give our project a name. Visual Studio will create a folder on our desktop using this project name. We hit create. Okay, now we're ready to go up to project. Once we go to project, we're going to say add new item. Project, add new item. We're not programming in C++, we're programming in C, so that's going to be main.c. So we hit add, and we're ready to put in our C programming language. Once we get our blank page, and I already typed this in so we can save a little bit of time, once we said project add new item main.c, we get a blank page that we are ready to start coding. For our programs, here's the required heading, course and semester information, your name and the date. Copyright, all rights reserved, just says that you verify that you are turning in your own work and not someone else's. A brief description of what the project does. It accepts the length, width, and height from the user and then calculates volume and surface area. So we don't have to use this secure scanf command. We say define CRT secure no warnings. So we could just use the regular scanf. So that we can use scanf and printf, we need the standard input-output library. C has many libraries, the math library, tons of libraries. We just need the input-output library for now. When you use these two, define has to come before include. Define has to come before include. We start our program, and now we're ready to declare our variables. Variables are declared all up at the top, not within the program. Yes, you can declare them within the program, but good programming practice that I'm going to look for is that they're declared at the top. So let's go ahead and declare some variables. Okay, so again, we're going to look at different data types. We're only looking at integer for now. Let's do integer length, width, and height. Okay, so that's our first sentence of our pseudocode. We're going to read in these values from the user. And then we're going to calculate volume, so I'm going to need another variable to hold that calculation for volume. Okay, so printf, enter length, scanf. %d is our placeholder for any integer that is declared. We're going to read from the keyboard an integer and store it into the address, that's your ampersand, the address of length. Now as I start typing length, this list comes up and I can see that if it has this sort of rectangle next to it, that's a variable that I've declared, so I can just double click to use it. Saves me a little bit of time. Okay, so we want to enter the length, we want to enter the width, and we want to enter the height. It's a bad idea to copy and paste, but I'm trying to save some time for uploading our code. When you copy and paste, you have to be very careful, and sometimes it's not worth the errors that it generates You have to be pretty attentive to what gets copied. Okay, so there is, we're done with our first line of pseudocode. Read in the length, width, and height. And that's the purpose of pseudocode. We want it detailed enough so that when we transfer it into the C programming language, now we're ready for the next step. We want it to be that detailed. Okay, calculate and print the volume of the box. Okay, so calculate the volume. Okay, and volume was already declared, so it's ready to go. So there's the calculate. Now we're ready to print. Placeholder for an integer has to be filled in with the contents of a variable. I want the contents of the variable volume to be filled in here. Okay, start with that debugging. Incremental development. We get a little bit working, then we go to the next to get the next working, then the next to get the next working. Okay, so if we had the length of 5, the width of 5, and the height of 5, 5 times 5 is 15, and 15 times 5 is 75. Volume, 15 times 5 is 75. Let's check that out. Let me grab a calculator. 5 times 5 times 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times 5 is 25 times 5 is 125, and so we're actually okay. I should have had that already done. Okay, so enter length 5, enter width 5, enter height 5. So our first 5 times 5 is 25. 25 times 5 should be 125, and there's our volume. So we know so far that our program is good up to this point.